My story starts with I like to begin with the food and end with the food. I come from high numbers, big numbers in weight. And I'll talk a little bit about my experience, strength, and hope. I think that'll keep it in order for me. As a girl growing up, I'm the oldest of 3 children, and I say that because I was really close to my mother. My mother used to share a lot of things with me. They did that with the oldest child. And I absolutely adored her, and she was very, very thin up until I turned like 18 years old. And I remember my first battle with image or thinking about my body was about 12 years old. She was sitting at the table eating very little because she didn't eat very much, and my father made a comment about her body. He said that you have like something like a pencil neck, you need to get some meat on your bones, you're too skinny. And for some reason that I just heard it was almost like he was whispering it in my ear. And so I saw the look on my mother's face, which was really sad, and she looked like she just wished she could have sunk under the table, I guess. And so it just really hit my heart. And I think somewhere at that young age, I decided that I didn't want a man saying anything about my body, period, even if it was complimentary. So that started with the image. My addiction started with the image. And this disease has a chatterer, so I've been kind of going back and looking at where all of that chattering started, and so I believe it really started there. So when I got into junior high school, about 13 years old, I was in a health course, and I was not fat, but I was very athletic at that time because I played volleyball, basketball, and in the summertime my mother always had us playing softball, and we just stayed active, go to the swimming pool. She kept us busy, girls club, all of that. So I was very active as a teenager. So I felt like my body, well, I didn't think my body was the greatest body, but when I turned adolescent, 13 years old, my first boy that wanted to like me, boys were so silly at 13, they like to hit you and do things, take your stuff, put stuff on your locker, and I couldn't stand this one boy. He had a square head, he smelled like dirty socks, I guess. He made a comment once when I was at the pool. I jumped into the pool and he said, "Oh, it's a big whale or a porpoise or something like that," And so that really hit me right in the chest right there. I think I went into it was a public pool, so I went into the little locker room and I looked at my thighs. And then it's like right then and there, I just started focusing on thighs. That was the body part that I focused on the most. Did that for 40 years. So it really isn't about weight. There's something else going on. And so with that being said, I went into a health class because I wanted to lose my thighs. I wanted my thighs to be better. I wanted the fat to be off my thighs. And so our health teacher was teaching us about eating raw meat, don't eat raw meat, something like that. And if you do eat raw meat, you can get parasites, and parasites cause weight loss. And so he was showing us a film strip. I'm an old woman, so film strip. And he had this before person and then after they had parasites, and the person was kind of regular size, but then when they had the parasite, they were very, very skin and bones. Now, instead of me seeing that as a health problem, I saw that as a solution. I was like, let me go home and see if I can get a little piece of raw meat and stick it in my mouth, and maybe I'll get a parasite and get all this weight. That's horrible, but that's the way it was. And I don't know if I went home and picked in some of my mother's meat or not, because that was not allowed, but I think I may have went and tried to get some meat and put it in my mouth. But it didn't work. I didn't get a parasite. So that was the real devastating thought processes that were going around my food. So the image, the thighs, the dieting started then. I went to the library at about 14 or 15, and I found a book, found my first diet, went home and tried to follow that. I couldn't follow that. And then I tried to exercise and went off to college. And by that time, when I first went to college, I got really involved with smoking cannabis and drinking liquor. And everybody did that in my at least at my college campus as a freshman. It seems like everybody did. So I got involved with drugs and alcohol. My father was an alcoholic. He is an alcoholic. He's in recovery. Well, he's not drinking now, but my father's an alcoholic. And so I picked up that gene from him, and they had free meals, 3 free meals. I had a card. Being a student, you could go into the dining room that they had there, and you can have your breakfast with your card. You can have your lunch with your card, and you can have your dinner with your card. And it just closed at about 6 o'clock in the evening. So you could stay in there for as long as you wanted and skip class if you wanted to eat it, because I did that a couple of times. And they had it like a buffet of food where you can just go and get all the food you want, all types of food. So God, that was the place to be, especially after smoking marijuana and having the munchies and stuff like that. I would just go in there and eat. So I was gaining weight the whole time. And I went to school to be an elementary school teacher with my undergraduate degree. And I remember doing my student teaching, and I was focusing on my thighs instead of, I thought the children, the second and third grade children were focusing on my thighs. They were just looking at me wanting to color. But, that was like, oh man, whenever I would get in front of people, I would just hear these voices. Like, oh girl, your thighs. So my body. And so I was obsessed with that, and dieting continued. I would go into the Reader's Digest at the beginning. One of my biggest vicious cycles was over the holidays. There would always be a Reader's Digest that would come out with a diet on it in the grocery store every holiday around November or December. So then I would say, okay, I'm going to eat all I want in December. When the New Year's come, New Year's Day, I'm starting this Reader's Digest diet. So it kind of made me just let go and just eat. Well, New Year's Day came. I may have done the diet for 2 days, and it was like, there I am back with all this weight. And, so that was one of my biggest things, is getting diets from books. And then I started ordering pills that I would see on TV late at night, or, somebody would come and show you the little cartoon of fat. It's just a cartoon, so they can manipulate that any kind of way. Say, this is your fat, and this is how it's going to shrink inside of your stomach and on your thighs when you take these pills. So I would go and order the pills, and they would send me these little bottles of pills. Stupid stuff to do, but I did that. And the biggest weight loss that I had with diet was with the diet where I joined it, and you only buy their food. And you can go to their little strip. They were in like little strip centers. Eventually, they'll mail your food. They would mail my food to me. And if I ate just their food, so I didn't go to a regular grocery store, if I just stuck with their foods that I had to buy weekly, I would lose weight. And I lost a lot of weight with this particular diet. There's celebrities that were doing the diet, and I lost a lot of weight, but I spent a lot of money to maintain that. So then eventually I started thinking, okay, let me just get what they serve me, and I'm going to go in the grocery store and get exactly what they want. But they had some kind of special chemical or something in that food, so that's why I lost weight. So that didn't work because it didn't last. And never thought about God or anything having to do with my food. I was still drinking, and finally I graduated from school to start my first teaching assignment, and then I went back to my hometown, which is Bryan College Station, and started teaching there. And the weight was on. I must have weighed about right at 200 pounds when I got out of my undergraduate studies. And I was working with a group of students where they had to take remedial mathematics. So I have to go pick them up and take them from their classroom and walk them out to these trailers, and walk them out to the trailer and do remedial math with them. And I remember how my ankles and everything used to hurt. And, one little girl or little boy would once said to me, "Are you okay, Miss Collins?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Just sweating like hell and this weight trying to get to my desk. And being a teacher, snacks was something that we did. We'd get snacks from the parents. They would come with every time they had a birthday, they had these little round things on the tray. And if one kid got it, then the other one kid had to get it. And so I was celebrating all the children's birthdays, so I was absolutely eating all the time. And then snacks were used as rewards. I would go buy all of these sweet things, put them in my teacher drawer, and when a kid did really good, I would say, "Come and get one of these," and they would get one, and then I would pop one in my mouth too, so I was rewarding myself all the time. So that was, I was compulsive. The food called me all the time. So that went on for years and years, and eventually the drinking is what got me into 12-step programs. I was just a terrible alcoholic. I couldn't function anymore, being the alcoholic I was. I was missing work, and I was getting ready to just let my career go down the drain. And my mother did an intervention, took me to this counselor, and said, just, go in there and talk to them about what's going on. I ended up having to stay there for 28 days. I was pissed off that she had me put in there, but that was good for me. That was the beginning of the 12 steps. And then while I was there, they started talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. And so it didn't take the first time. It took a couple of times before AA took for me. And finally, I got it, and I got something that when I stopped drinking, I saw life. I could see things that I hadn't seen before. So the clarity came from letting the alcohol and the drugs go. And my life got better. Thank God for AA. And I moved to Houston. I taught here for a while. And I started going to a regular AA meeting in Houston. And I got into my first relationship. And of course, nobody stays with anybody that keeps saying, am I fat? Am I too fat? Am I too fat? Am I too fat? That was big too in my relationships. I've been able to see how I've pushed people out of my life because I constantly needed them to validate me. I wasn't connected with my body, so it affected my sex life and everything, and my choices. I felt safer with women, so I dated women in my college years, and those were the basis of my relationships. But I was at a meeting one night after I had been in a relationship and I had gone back out. I had 6 years of sobriety and went back out drinking because of this disease. I know that today because I was so caught up. And when the person left, I started drinking again. So I did that for a few more years, and I had a job where they paid really good insurance, and the insurance would take care of getting my stomach stapled because I was about 245 pounds at that time. And I wanted to get my stomach stapled. So when I went to the doctor that treated obesity to get me approved for the insurance, he said, well, you're not quite at the obesity mark. We really can do this if you're like at close to 300 pounds. So, wow, I was like, okay, let me go. You don't have a problem with that. I can go eat and make 300 pounds, And I was doing training at that time and, in a classroom. And, my boss fired me because I was so sick. It was like I was late because, the food kept me cluttered in my mind. I couldn't get it together. I'm trying to train. I'm thinking about my fat self, and it was just a horrible experience. And so I got fired from that job, so I didn't have the insurance, and I didn't make quite 300 pounds, so that's the end of that. So that was up in the Midwest, Minnesota, Indiana, in that area. So finally I got back to Houston, and I got sober again. I surrendered to the alcohol again and went back to my home group. And I met a person one night. In fact, it was Grania, I'll just say her name here. After the meetings at AA, a lot of times we go out for coffee and food. But this particular person, I asked her if she wanted to go out to eat food, and she said the strangest thing to me is like, oh, I don't eat at restaurant. I'm not eating at a restaurant. I already have my food. I don't know why that was such a strange statement, but I was like, what? What is that? And she said, I weigh and measure my food, something in that way. And it was like, okay, I'd like to check that out. I would like to see what that is about. Because I was like, let me go see what this is about, because this is a strange woman. So I went to my first Grey Sheet meeting. Thank God for that, because it changed my dieting. I never dieted after my first Grey Sheet meeting. That was about 15, 16 years ago, I think. It's almost 15 years ago. And the woman that was sharing was talking about eating out of the garbage. So when you first go into these rooms like me, I'm looking at a reason for not being there. And that was my first reason, like, okay, they must walk around neighborhoods and not go out. There's no way I'm going to be here because I don't do that shit, And so, but she ended her story to say she would go to the store and buy all of her binge foods. And then she would eat them. And then she would get so angry at herself that she would throw all of this expensive groceries that she went and spent all that money in the garbage. But then late in the midnight hours, she would be in there digging out that garbage to get that food. So I was like, oh shit, that's what I do. That's what I do. I've done that many times. So it was enough to get my attention. And when I left there, I decided I wasn't going to diet anymore. But I didn't quite get how powerful food was, that it was really an addictive process. And I did never leave Grey Sheet, though. Grey Sheet was always around. I would always go back to the meetings, try again. I was in Outpost in South Carolina for a while. I was doing meetings in California. I lived there for a while. I'd catch the train and go to meetings. And the longest I stayed abstinent when I was in California was like a year and a half of abstinence when I was out there, because they had face-to-face meetings. But then my partner and I moved to South Carolina. And in South Carolina, it was just Outpost meetings, so that was just phone meetings that they had there. They have some in Charleston and places, but where I was, it was an Outpost. So I would still get on the phone. And then I met some GreySheeters that used primarily my religion that I studied, which was the Bible and Christianity. And I tried doing that, but it just didn't work for me, because I have to have the 12 steps. God could and would if he were solving the 12 steps. And so I stayed there for almost a decade, struggling with the weight. Eventually, December 15, I was here for the Christmas holidays, and I came to this meeting. And, I was preparing to move back because I had an ill parent. My father has Alzheimer's, and I'm trying to help with him and my mother. And so made a decision after I moved back here, to just keep coming to this meeting, and these people here, these women, and sometimes we have men, have been so supportive for me. I mean, they've offered me to stay in their house sometimes just to get over the addiction, to help and support. And so the face-to-face meeting is so important. The tools I use today are the Gray Sheet Bridge. I get on the bridge every single day this whole year I've been abstinent. And I also make phone calls in between meetings. I buy good food. I buy badass food. So that when I have my food, if I open up my food around someone, I just want it to, and it shines. I don't even have to say anything. People are like, what is that? You know, it's so beautiful. And so I'll be like, yeah, and it's all mine. And, you know, it's all mine. Am I time up?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. Thank you, Grace. And so the food. It is amazing. The food on Gray Sheet, it plan, protect. I feel confident when I have my food. Very seldom do I think about thoughts, but that still comes up. That's just something that's kind of ingrained, and I deal with it. I think what I deal with it now is when I think about it, I say, okay, that's all right. You know, I'm getting beautiful and I'm gonna live a life of my wildest dreams, you know. I talk back to it. And the steps are so important. The Gray Sheet 12 and 12 literature just came out. I grabbed that too, and that was something that I got that was really opened the doors for me, because it's written by GreySheeters, and it said in there this one line I had heard over 15 years: if you want what we have, then you'll do what we do. Why can I get that? But that particular day I said, I'm going to go do what they do. And I bought the food, got on the bridge, come to the meetings. I don't eat no matter what, thank God. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia.
Yes.